MDOT presents the Extra Mile Podcast.
Welcome into another edition of the Extra Mile Podcast presented by the Mississippi Department of Transportation. I'm Paul Catul, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Will Kraft, right over there in the other seat. So listen, we have a lot of fun on this podcast, get to see a lot of cool places, talk to a lot of cool people. We're going to go a little heavier today. September is Suicide Prevention Month. It's a very important month, and with that in mind, we've brought in a subject matter expert, a therapist, and his title is really cool too, Construction Leadership Coach Craig Watson, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the industry and kind of a little more susceptible to some mental health issues. So, Craig, thank you so much for stopping by the MDOT studios today and talking to us about this important subject.
Well, thank you guys for, arranging your schedules to have me in here. Appreciate that.
Oh, of course. Very important. And, very interesting kind of direction you've taken therapy. And so very excited to learn more about that. So how did you kind of get into this whole world?
That is a great question. Yeah, so I'm a therapist by trade, been doing mental health therapy for 15 years. I've got a group practice over in Madison. For the past 7 years, I've been doing leadership coaching in construction. How did I get into that? I think partly, growing up in Mississippi, you kind of grow up on a farm, or a lot of us do, and things like that. Also, my dad worked road construction for about 40 years, and then his dad before him worked road construction. So I was always around the people. And then when I moved to this area and started in private practice, it always kind of I always wanted to do some type of leadership training and coaching, and just kind of fell into the right people and saw that there was a very high need. These construction folks, it's skills that you would get, these leadership skills, whether it's communication, conflict resolution, developing your people. If you were working at let's say an AT&T, you would get that. But for some reason, the construction industry is just kind of ignored on that. So started doing that last year, and you probably, maybe gave you a copy, wrote a book last year, put it out. It's called the Construction Leadership Field Manual, and just been building on it for the past 7 years. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. So as far as work going on with MDOT, I think you're already working on some things. Talk about some of those experiences.
Yeah, I've done several things with MDOT. MDOT has done their LEAD program, which is the leadership development skills for people showing promise or up and coming, or just anybody, kind of wanting that, which I think was a great thing that MDOT implemented there. Talked at several conferences and things like that. A lot of times just focusing on communication skills, how to have difficult conversations, which is something that a lot of us avoid a lot of times, especially when you have people reporting to you. And then, hopefully you're going to be able to do some more stuff this upcoming year. So hopefully kind of get onto that and in the talks with that.
Yeah, and you alluded to this, talked about sort of making that transition from doing it whole scale. And again, you still have your private practice and do a lot of those, but sort of focusing and honing in on the construction sort of aspect. How did that actually come to be? I guess, again, you talked about having your dad experience in there. Is there maybe some data or something? Is it a more prevalent issue in some of the construction or blue-collar fields?
Well, it is.
Okay.
So two things kind of happened. I do think that growing up in that atmosphere, I kind of knew the people, started kind of learned the personalities, but also just things just kind of lined up. Like I met the president of a company, he was the president at the time, and he was in need of some leadership, or his company was in need of some leadership training development. I was dipping my toe in that arena, and so we kind of got together, and it was kind of like a God thing, a right place, right time, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. The other thing, which you asked, is it more prevalent? Well, as you guys probably know, there's a big crisis right now with the labor force. A lot of people are aging out within the next 5 to 8 years. I think it was something like 40% of the construction workforce was going to be aging out, the boomer generation. And those coming in behind my generation and after only are making up about 25%.
Okay.
So, you don't have to be a math wizard to know that those numbers don't add up, So, a lot of focus on how to develop your employees and keep them around. There's always going to be people that, or there may always be people that leave for another $1 an hour, but, I'm big on the philosophy of, if we invest in our people, they're probably going to invest back. If I'm working with you, Will, and you know that I'm investing in you, I care about your development, I want to see you grow, it's less likely that you're going to leave for an extra couple of bucks an hour. And just in general, people don't really like change. They want to stay where they are. You know, the devil we know is better than the devil we don't.
That's right.
So we'll stay where we are. And so that's been a big emphasis with this aging workforce is, hey, how do we develop these guys? And there's not as many skilled laborers coming out. You guys probably are aware of this too. I think there was a time where you could, let somebody go and then there's another one waiting at the gate to kind of replace them. The field's more of a training ground now than anything. What I mentioned earlier about kind of growing up on a farm, I always use this example. Like when I was baling hay with my grandfather and the hay baler broke down, we would have to figure out how to fix it right then and there in the 100 whatever degree heat, right? It's not so much the same anymore, so there's different learning styles and things that we have to communicate and, kind of train up the generation coming in.
Very true, yeah.
That's awesome. Really cool you have found that like specific little targeted area in the industry. So let's dive closer. We talked about September as a suicide prevention month. So within this industry, from what you've told us, these workers, individuals are a little more susceptible to some mental health issues. Kind of why is that exactly?
Yeah, well, let's talk about just the statistics really quick. If you work in construction, you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide than the national average. So among any industry, it's either number 1 or number 2, depending on what year you're looking at the data. In my opinion, it doesn't really matter. It's just, it's shocking. So that's a high number. If I were to tell you, hey, if you worked at McDonald's, you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide. You're probably not going to work at McDonald's, or you're absolutely gonna
take my business to Burger King.
Yeah, you're gonna put in some safeguards, right? Sure. If I told you, hey, if you're operating a track hoe, you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide. We're gonna implement some things to make sure that we're safe, just like you would fall protection or anything else. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Your first question was, why is that? Why is it more prevalent in the construction industry? There's multiple factors to that. Number 1 is it's a lot of pressure. Tight deadlines. You're dealing with it's a tough job, so physical pain. You're dealing with the elements. A lot of pressure to get things done and get things done in a certain time. The other thing is it's a male-dominated workforce. And as men, we don't really. We are taught not to talk about anything that's bothering us, and we're certainly taught not to bring it to work. And so in that, another thing I'll say is that we really don't always know what's actually going on. I tell people, and we'll get into this a little bit, you spend more time with your coworkers than you do your family a lot of times. Oh, yeah. And so if that's the case, if I'm going through a heavy depressive episode, honestly, when you're in the middle of it, you're likely not to notice. But if you work with me 50 to 60 hours a week, you're probably going to be able to tell something's off. Like when your wife says, hey, what's wrong with you? I don't know. I don't even know what you're talking about. It's because she's noticed something, over the past few weeks or whatever. So all that to say is, it's a lot of pressure. It's a male-dominated industry. We also, men take pride in getting things done, getting through the hard stuff and working things out. So can be this mentality of we should be able to do this. Sure. We should be able to just kind of fix this and solve the problem. And then also, we don't always know what's going on. There's several other factors. High rates of substance use. Again, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of pain, a lot of physical pain in this industry. Attracts people from wide variety of background, a lot of trauma background and things like that, who don't always have access to all the resources to address a lot of this stuff.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, several of those. Not to a surprise at all, but, I mean, it is true. I mean, I may be going through something, struggling with an issue, but even to add, it sort of is the male complex, and we don't really want to talk about that. But even one step further, sort of in a managerial role that I found myself, fortunately, to be in at this point. If I'm struggling with something, I generally don't want to put that on other people too, even if I need help. It feels like I'm burdening others. Maybe to share some of that too. So I absolutely agree and can definitely see it.
No doubt. And you see it. I see it a lot in the field. Like I said, I've been practicing clinically for about 15 years. I've seen more suicide and suicide attempt working with construction in the last 7 years than I have 15 years of my clinical practice. And so that's lining up with those statistics, all of that. I mean, it's kind of wild. I do think we need to treat it as like a safety issue, just like anybody does their JHA. And I will say a credit to a lot of these companies that I work with. I do hear them. I was on a call yesterday, it's a short week, earlier this week,
Right.
and they brought up mental health, and not just because I was on the call, So it is, a lot of these companies are absolutely willing to talk about it. At the end of the day, if you have healthy employees, everything's going to go smoother, right? But a lot of these companies are willing to talk about it, but everybody doesn't always know how.
Sure. It does seem like the conversation has changed a little bit. Even you kind of see it in the sports world. I know A.J. Brown,
Yeah.
I'm an Ole Miss fan, has talked about mental health.
Yeah.
If you see kind of an athlete, a big alpha dog like him,
Yeah.
talk about it, maybe the conversation will change a little bit. But obviously this is a problem in the construction industry, and you're a therapist. So what are you kind of doing on your end to combat this?
So I've created an app. Well, I partnered with Columbia University and created an app that is free to the construction industry. And what that looks like is, so let's say, Paul, you and I, we've worked together, and you start seeing that I am showing up late, have a couple, my productivity's down, have a couple near misses, and you say, hey, Craig, something seems off. I notice you've been late. That's not like you. Is there something you want to talk about? And I kind of say, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm actually going through a really hard time, having some dark thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this. What do you do?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah,
I
good
do.
question.
Yeah,
right?
that is a good question.
Yeah.
I would, if someone came to me and said that, I would try to the best of my ability to talk to them about it. I don't know if I'm the most, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry, that was a tough question. You got me.
So
You got me.
that is, most people absolutely don't want to ignore it, have great intentions, and then they'll say something, is there something you want to talk about? And let's say I take it a step further. Yeah, I'm going through a divorce, finances are tight. I'm feeling hopeless, man. And you're kind of stuck,
Yeah.
right? Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So you get anything from that to, well, hang in there, or, we can go grab a beer after work or whatever, And so again, good intentions, but not always, we don't always know exactly what to do. Sure. So what the app does is called Hard Hat Help. It's available on Apple and Android. It is free to whoever wants it. But what the app does is it gives you guided questions to ask. And we can go through it, and it'll probably be good for people to kind of hear what that sounds like. But so what you would do in that situation is say, okay, well, let me just I'm worried about you, or I'm concerned. Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you a few questions here and kind of go from there. And at the end of it, it'll tell you if they're at severe, moderate, or low risk. And it'll also give you resources. So it gives you the National Suicide Text Line. It'll give you, if you allow it to use your location, it'll give you local resources as well that you can contact. So
Okay.
very useful. I tell people, when I go to these companies, I say, hey, just put it on your phone, like having a pipe wrench. I don't need it every day, but when I do, it's really, really handy to have.
Absolutely.
awesome.
And look, I think right after this, we will do the sort of walkthrough with the app, like you mentioned. But one thing you sort of already alluded to in that description, what are some of the things that, maybe us as managers or just as individuals, as coworkers, what are some of those, I guess, like linchpin tips that you would give out, for noticing and dealing?
Yeah, when I give these talks, I try to tell people, when you walk away from here, I want you to know what to look for and then what to do when you notice that. So what to look for. Just in general, if there's a history of mental illness, suicidality, if there's high substance use, financial problems, relationship breakdown, any of those things are all pretty big warning signs. Some of those more specific to the construction industry and more specific to men. Another general one is like a sudden change in mood. So maybe they're outgoing and then they're suddenly withdrawn and not talking to anybody, or maybe they're always angry. In construction, or in men, we tend to show it a little differently. I always tell people it's not like you see on Hallmark movies or somebody just sitting down on the couch crying or anything like that. As men, we show it with trouble sleeping. We show it through anger, irritability, yelling, throwing, a lot of physical pain, whether it's actual physical pain. Irritable bowel is another big one that will show up in men. So men typically, again, and then the other common risk factors, financial issues, things like that.
Sure.
I'll give you an example. So, get a phone call, a guy says, I'm a little worried about this guy, but he's not really doing anything. Well, we start putting the pieces together. Well, it's been a really rainy spring, right? So he hasn't been working as much. So he's got financial problems, likely,
Right.
He's been drinking more. We know that. So that's another risk factor. He works in construction, so that's another big risk factor. So all of a sudden it went from, I'm a little bit worried about this guy, something seems off, to, oh, well, now we're checking checking a lot of boxes. We need to kind of dive in and see what's going on here. So the big thing is, again, whether you're working in this office, whether you're a contractor out on the job, whatever, you spend so much time with these people. You will notice if Will has one off day, that's probably not the end of the world. If Will's got like a week or 2 weeks where he's just, walking around the halls, throwing everything against the wall and things like that, you're probably going to have to stop up and say something. That was a joke. I don't.
He does. He's a tyrant.
Yeah. Never know.
Tyrant of public affairs.
I mean, it
makes
is interesting.
sense.
The one point you made, sort of in the background there. I mean, some of this it feels like it doesn't happen overnight, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are things and leads up to, and I guess maybe my absolute non-expert opinion in there is right. If you notice yourself, right, it's a series of things, and it compounds and it builds. If you think like I'm gonna be better tomorrow, or it's just gonna be worse tomorrow, it's not generally how it happens, I guess. And I don't know if that's observed or if that is just my opinion.
I would agree, and I would also say at times in my life, when I've felt like I've kind of hit a wall or a breaking point or been in a really low spot, after I got out of it and looked back, to your point, I can start to see where it was building up for months. And that's where other people will start to notice it. And I tell people too, yes, there's a higher risk in construction, but just life in general. Life's going to knock us all to our knees at some point. You're going to have a loved one pass away. You're going to go through a relationship breakdown, whatever. It's going to become too much at some point. And so whether you got a history of mental illness or not, we need to be looking out for each other, just like use spotters when backing up big equipment, things like that. We just want to look out for one another.
Absolutely. I've said it once and I'll say it before. Life is hard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just is. We're all just trying to make it.
Yeah.
And the support system. Well, I would say having the resource that I know I'm going to have some help walking through does make it, in theory, if this was a real situation, does make it a little easier to go into. Versus me blindly having zero experience in your world,
right?
Needing to have that conversation with Paul, having some of those tools and resources, I can absolutely see it making that easier.
Yeah, so that's the whole point, right? Like I said about the pipe wrench, it's like you have the tools and it will help you walk through it. You do not have to be a mental health expert, and nobody's expecting you to be a mental health expert. All I'm asking is that you check in. And so a challenge this month to everybody listening, watching, download the app. You don't have to walk anybody through the app if you don't feel like it, but just check in on some of your teammates. Hey, how's everything going? Just want to do a quick check-in with you. How's everything overall? Just check in with them. Just taking the time to do that. I know we all want to do our jobs and we all get busy doing our jobs, but without people, we're not going to be able to do our jobs.
Right.
And suicide has such a ripple effect. It's horrific. It's treatable though, and it is recognizable and treatable, but it is horrific. And so when somebody that you work with dies by suicide, that impacts the entire crew for months on end. A lot of times I'll see when that happens a couple months later, I've gotten to the point where I tell their supervisors, hey, in a couple months start looking for you guys to be a little bit more irritable, because they're going through a grieving process too. So anyway, all that to say, I kind of lost my train of thought, but all that to say, you don't have to be a mental health expert.
Right.
Just know that you care.
No doubt. And that's the beauty of the app. That's amazing. Excellent work. Can you remind us one more time how to download the app?
Yep, it's called Hard Hat Help, and just go to your app store, whether on Apple or Google, and just search Hard Hat Help, and it's a little hard hat with like a sun underneath it.
Excellent.
Good looking app. And I think, for what it's worth, you mentioned what MDOT provides. We do have the Region 8. I think it's the employee assistance. It would have been really good for us and responsible to have that information, to provide it now, but we can link that in the post and the copy.
Yeah, and actually at the end it pulled up Region 8.
Okay,
so
there we
one of the resources. But if that is who you guys use as your employee assistance program, yes, it's always good to remind your employees, this is who we have as our EAP. Just like having that app, none of it's a silver bullet, but having these tools at your disposal can really, really go a long way.
Definitely. Again, excellent work. I'm certain this could, potentially save lives for sure. So listen, we'll begin to ramp down. Very, very heavy subject, and very important. So you referenced earlier that you have been working with MDOT and kind of, building, future leaders. You did an excellent session with us in, I guess we said Tupelo
It was in
prior
Tupelo.
to the show.
Yeah.
So we could really go just talk about this for hours, but let's like, I guess, hone in on a little area. Difficult conversations. So we talked about that in a different context earlier. But if you're a manager, and I know we have people that, you know, work for MDOT and listeners that work in all different kinds of jobs, if you're trying to have a difficult conversation, kind of briefly tell me how you would approach that.
So, yes. And so if you're a manager, there's going to come some point where you're going to be having a conversation you never thought you would have, or it's going to be a personality type that, you know, you just kind of maybe have friction with. So what I always tell people, I think I said in your guys' class, think about that person who just frustrates you the most. When they call you, you're like, oh, I don't want to answer that call. When you got to have a difficult conversation, whether it's correcting them for a behavioral issue or whatever the case, I always say frame it up with these 3 points. Number one, let them know that you're going to have a hard conversation. Don't beat around the bush. Yeah. Don't, you know, because I'm sure we've all experienced that where we had that and we walked away and we're like, what was he just saying? So let them know what you're going to talk about. Hey, Will, I got to have a hard conversation with you about your work performance lately, you know, or about something you said in the cafeteria, whatever. Number two, let them know how you want it to end. When we walk out of here, I want us to have a plan for how you're going to bring your performance up. Or I'm a big fan of contrasting statements, so kind of labeling what you don't want. What I don't want is for you to think I'm attacking you or don't think I'm grateful that you're here. What I do want is for us to work together and walk away with a plan. So
I like that.
Let them know what you're going to talk about. Let them know how you want it to end. And then lastly, get their buy-in. And I always say, does that work for you? Is that okay? Does that sound good to you? Most of the time, they're just going to nod their head yes. That's kind of putting them in a problem-solving mode. We're human beings. We're going to be a little resistant. Anytime we get feedback, we're going to be a little defensive. That's normal. But when you start in that way, you know, you can kind of frame it up. And then some of the stuff that we talked about previously, it's normal for people to bring up, well, I only did this because this guy did this. And, hey, I'm happy to talk about that later. Right now we're talking about this. So if you use that framework, it kind of helps you stay on task.
I like that.
I love that framework. You know, everyone who's managed people have had to dealt with that. I can think of a situation in my head where I put it off for months.
Right.
Like I would be like, oh, I'll just get to that next week. And just kind of like the app in a different context, it's a great roadmap to just kind of attack. You know?
And what happens when you put it off? Right? It just two things happen. Yeah. One, you know, Will maybe doesn't even know that his behavior was a problem. Two, his coworkers see it and like, well, we let Will do it. And then I start telling myself a story in my head, like, well, Will did this because, you know, he doesn't respect me, and just kind of build us all this up. And so resentment starts to build up, as opposed to if this happened on Tuesday morning and I have that conversation Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning, hey, Will, I got to talk to you about something that happened yesterday. Oh, if I start talking to you about it next week, it's kind of like punishing the dog for being in the house. You know, 2 days later, we don't know what's going on.
You couldn't have painted a more realistic example, because that is we did that today. Dogs, new puppies, all kind of life adventures going on around here.
Oh goodness!
I love everything you just said. That's so true. I mean, it is very difficult. Like Paul just said. I mean, I don't know that I have a situation in my head to draw off an example, but I can absolutely see that being true. That, you know, man, we've got to have this conversation, but we don't have to have it today. You know, just kicking that can down the road, and it inevitably makes the situation worse. That's so true.
Yeah.
Well, look, man, again, as Paul said, I just echo, very, very grateful for you stopping by today and joining us. We want to wrap things up here with a couple of fun questions.
Yeah.
And send us out of here on a high note for sure.
Yeah.
But, look, as a podcast, as a people, and as MDOT, we love to eat and we love to music. So 2 quick fun questions here for you on those. I will steal the food question today for you. So I'm sure you spend a lot of time driving around the state, and even if not, is there somewhere maybe you don't get to go to very often that's just a staple of, like, if I'm going to be in that area, got to stop here?
So for me, it's Prophet's Porch in Columbus.
Prophet's?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. I've loved it since I was a kid.
Okay.
That's a good one. That was probably my go-to.
What kind of style of food?
Like New Orleans style sandwiches, but the bread's delicious, and it's been there like since the 80s, and it's on a little lake. There, it's really great.
Sounds like a wonderful pitch to me. Add it to the list.
Add it to the list. I say this like every other show, but I'm just like shocked. I don't know every restaurant in Mississippi. I think Mississippi's like so small, but then, you know, everyone surprises us. Prophet's Porch.
Great name, too.
Oh, yeah. We will hit it up. And then, like Will said, we also love music and MDOT and public affairs. And I don't know, I'm just going to judge you. You look like a music guy. So don't let me down. Is there a concert that you've attended in the past that really sticks out in your head, really made some memories?
In Mississippi?
It could be anywhere.
Anywhere?
Anywhere.
So 2 in Mississippi in the past year. I saw Sturgill Simpson at Brandon, then also a big one for me, Dwight Yoakam.
Oh, wow,
which is
yes.
just pretty
Still touring
pretty
out there.
phenomenal, yeah. And then I saw the Black Keys at Red Rocks this past May.
All right,
Whoa.
that's on
Yeah,
my bucket list.
So that was great. If you haven't been out there, you should definitely go.
That is my most highly sought after trip for Sarah Bailey, my wife, listening out there. Birthday present ideas. We're going to get to Red Rocks eventually. Yes.
And actually this month going to see Blink-182. So throwback to
wow.
my
Let's go.
throwback to my childhood.
Super. Is that also at Red Rocks by chance?
No, it's in St. Louis. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
Blink-182, that's pretty cool.
That
Awesome.
is cool. And you didn't let me down. Sturgill's actually my favorite musician.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Well, let's call him Johnny Blue Skies.
Let's do it.
For
I
the
got
people
the
that really know,
t-shirts. Yeah.
Johnny Blue Skies.
I wore that shirt on vacation recently, and everybody was just coming up to me and talking.
Love it. And hopefully he joins Dead and Company after Bobby.
Yeah, that'd be
passes
cool.
on.
That's what we're hearing.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing. All right.
Give the people what they want.
Yes. Yes, Craig, thank you so much for joining
Hey.
us. What an insightful conversation.
Thanks for having me, and I just want to throw out here real quick, if you want please download the app, but if you want any more information about the leadership coaching, things I do, you can go to coachingforconstruction.org, and you can find all my information there.
Amazing. Thank you, Craig. Thank you so much. And let's just go ahead and wrap things there. Thank you to our listeners, our viewers, for tuning into the Extra Mile podcast. You can watch and listen to episodes by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile. Follow us on social media at Mississippi DOT is the handle. We want to thank our producer, editor, Drew Hall, for holding things down behind the scenes. And remember to drive smart out there on Mississippi highways.